Well, all right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us here today on your lovely Friday morning for most, afternoon for some. I'm Jordan Levy, the founder and executive director of CapSource. Exciting to be putting on this IACBE fully virtual fall live case competition with the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville, Florida, with one of my most prized mentors, Diane Boyle, and the rest of her amazing team, who I'm sure will be a part of this webinar as they were the kickoff when we launched the project just a couple weeks ago. We know that you guys have been hard at work and that you have so many questions. Actually, we've received more questions than we ever have for any live case competition previously. So if that's not an indication that you're engaged and working hard to come up with real insights, then I don't know what is. So without further ado, again, I'm Jordan Levy, excited to get started. If you have any questions throughout your experience, always feel free to email me. I will make sure it gets to our team. If it's a question for Ronald McDonald House, that this is the time, right? So we're gonna actually open it up for questions throughout the session. If you have follow-up questions, Preeti, my colleague from CapSource and the director of this particular initiative, will be helping to answer some of those questions by text and will chime in if she feels it's a good opportunity to enhance the conversation. So feel free to use that chat function. And hopefully you guys are pretty used to Zoom at this point, so no need to explain how to use that feature. Same with the applause. If you want to give one of those, or the hand raise, feel free. Of course, the final deliverables are due on Friday at noon next week Eastern Time. Please make sure that your memo is in PDF format and that you're sending us a link that we can download that document. You could send it as an attachment if you'd like, but it should be in PDF. The video file should 100% be a link, and it should be accessible to the public. So if we cannot view it, then we cannot grade it, and then we unfortunately cannot give you credit for it. So please make sure to do that and not get it in any later than noon. We've actually created a Google form, so instead of emailing those particular assets to me directly, we're going to be accepting them through the Google form this time. This today is the Q&A webinar session. There's only one of them for this particular experience because it's a short timeline. It's only a 3-week engagement. We kicked off last week. Teams were finalized. You guys have been working together for now a couple of weeks. And then don't forget, after the Thanksgiving holiday break, we'll be back the following Friday to actually announce the winners and give you guys some feedback on the amazing work that you've done for the Ronald McDonald House. Of course, final deliverables are due next Friday. I mentioned that, and that there is going to be one more survey going out to you guys to wrap up the competition. If you want the certificate of completion, you'll need to submit all the surveys and your final deliverables, and then we will be able to send that over to you. Other than that, we are extremely grateful to have our very own Diane Boyle, the executive director of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Jacksonville, here with us today. How are you, Diane?
I'm great. Just fine. Thank you.
Thank you. So there are a few questions that I'm going to address first, and then we'll get right to it. And hopefully this will be a really informative session for all the students. So the first thing was, with regards to the video presentation, do you want students to be seen as well as heard? So of course, we would like to see your faces. I think everyone is used to being on video conference calls now. If you do not know how to use the record feature of the Zoom calls, if you don't have that option accessible to you, there's a free tool called Loom. It's like Zoom with an L, which is exactly what I'm using. There's literally a little recorder on the side of the screen, and you can record while you web conference using any web conference tool. There's also a free web conference tool called Whereby that I recommend if you don't have access to anything else. Otherwise, I'm guessing most of your schools already have tools that they're using. So it'll be a really easy way, set up your presentation, share screen, record the whole screen. It also captures audio. I'm going to say this only once. We do not want to get a PowerPoint with audio embedded. It is not a good experience for our judges. It's also not easy to follow. So I highly recommend that you submit a comprehensive video that's no longer than 3 minutes per our guidance. The video itself should be a highlight of exactly what you think the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Jacksonville should do based on the prompt. It should not just recap the memo. The memo should be the meat and potatoes of what you're submitting, but really a lot more of the points are allocated to that video. And so we really want you to spend a little bit of time. You don't have to worry about After Effects and video editing, but we do want to see you, we want to hear you, and we want it to be a really good overview of your recommendations of how you think the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville should move forward. The next question is there a required format for the executive memo? I recommend that you act and think like a professional. So how are you going to position yourself to best explain recommendations to the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Jacksonville? I recommend that it's concise, that it's organized into different sections that they can easily follow, as well as the judges. That's the way in which you're expected to deliver outcomes to any type of stakeholder, whether it's a senior to you, a colleague of yours, in the real world. So there's plenty of examples that are available on our website. I'm happy to provide access to those. I believe they're already embedded into the charter of what students have submitted previously. One standout one, Munevo competition and CoinSource competition, Oregon Tech from last year. What an incredible memo. It's visually appealing. Don't forget that's a big part of experiencing a deliverable is how it looks and feels to the recipient, and that it's easy, of course, to access, as I mentioned earlier. So hopefully that helps with these two kind of administrative questions, and then we'll move on to a first question for Diane and the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville team. So the first question is, the goal is to develop a rollout strategy on how to virtually engage 4,000 volunteers. Can you please elaborate on what exactly you would like us to have them engage on? What does engage mean to you and the organization? And what's kind of the outcome that you're looking for out of these engagements? Is it fundraising? Is it just to have a larger amount of people engage with the Ronald McDonald House, a more diverse crowd? Any insight that you can give us would be awesome, Diane.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for this opportunity today to go through this Q&A and help to further define what does a successful outcome look like. Importantly, I just want to reintroduce two very important people on this call. The first being Marina Franz. Marina is the volunteer manager. So she is the direct report to 4,000 of our volunteers. And the second being Ashley Strickland, who I think you met on a former call. Ashley is the marketing manager here at the Ronald McDonald House, and of course has a responsibility of every message that comes out of this organization through social media, through any form of marketing. She controls the power of that language and certainly how we reach out to our volunteers. We have intentionally presented this challenge as being rather broad-based. We have 4,000 volunteers that since March have not been able to engage with the Ronald McDonald House. They are home. They cannot come in here because of the CDC protocols and the fact that we have children who are at risk and who are immune depressed. However, our volunteers want to remain engaged, and they are looking for strategies on how to be engaged. This could be a fundraising strategies. You have many people who are very interested in fundraising for you. That would be a successful outcome. You have others who want to be engaged in another way. That is also a successful outcome. The outcome here is keeping the 4,000 volunteers engaged with this particular nonprofit. We know we are their charity of choice. We've got to keep them engaged until the end of COVID when they can come back in the house. And without volunteers, the truth of the matter is nonprofits cannot really deliver their mission or achieve their goals. So maintaining this very committed group of volunteers who are always reaching out to us and asking us what can they do to help us is important. We have utilized a number of strategies already, and Marina and Ashley are going to elaborate on that right now. So you have an idea of what is going on, and some of the activities that are happening already. Ashley, Marina, either one of you want to kick that off right now?
Sure, absolutely. So some of the things that we have going on in the house right now is one of our biggest things is we're actually doing a cook-a-thon with our chef, and that is virtual. So we're having that with different times throughout the month. We've scheduled a couple evenings where she picks an item and she teaches you how to cook it. She gives you tips and tricks, and that's a part of one of the engagements that we have. It's allowing our groups to still be a part of our Meal Makers program. It allows them to still feel like they're a part of our kitchen with us, where a lot of them have a heart is to be with our food. So they love to serve our families in that aspect. So that's still giving them an opportunity there. As well as we've created a couple of things that we're doing with our children, and some of them include doing book readings with them, as well as some arts and crafts activities. Both of those have both gone virtual. So we're doing those with them, as well as we really keep up the Zoom calls with our volunteers. It's very important for us to keep that connection with them, to make them feel like they still have a sense of community with us. So that's very important. We have a couple a month that we do. And then as well as we just keep the traditional, we keep the personalized notes. We send them things in the mail. It's all about making sure that they are remembered, that they're important to us. Keeping that tangible thing with them is very important to us. And we've also made a couple of other adjustments to things, and Ashley can speak on that.
Yep. I actually wanted to elaborate also on the cook-a-thon. So with that, that is virtual. And one of the other things that Vernetta has done is she's done a Q&A session. So you have this chef who's like, hey, you know, the holidays are coming up, we know Thanksgiving, Christmas. So she has done a really successful Q&A sessions where our volunteers have called in on Zoom, and they had all like a hour and a half of discussion just around food. Like, what do you do about this? What do you do about that? So that was that activity really grew from just a cook-a-thon. It was like, all right, cool, let's do another Q&A that's just about talking to a chef at your home, very relaxed conversation about food. And what was the other thing, Marina, you wanted me to elaborate on with volunteers?
Oh, I think you're good.
Okay. All right.
I think, Ashley, maybe you want to explain our phenomenal Deck the Doors initiative that we've gone virtual with?
Oh, absolutely. So our Deck the Doors campaign is a campaign that last year we started this, and what it is you pay $5 on this peer-to-peer website, very much similar to like a GoFundMe, and that $5 gets you a light bulb. We have various color schemes that go along with it. And so what we did was that with that $5, obviously the money comes back to our mission. And then on the back of the card is a place for a message. So you can write something inspirational, something hopeful, something special to the families at our house. So we took those light bulbs and we decked the doors, hence Deck the Doors campaign, of the families in our house. So it takes 150 light bulbs or $750 to deck a whole door. So you essentially adopted a door or adopted a family, as you know, sort of like that. And we've already had companies sign up. We have several companies that have signed up. And this activity really spans a lot of different groups. So corporations have done it. Corporations, they are purchasing like common spaces. So if you all have seen the video, you see that we have kitchen, we have dining room, we have a playroom. So we've had larger companies come in and deck, well, not come in, last year they came in, but larger companies this year pay to support those areas, those common spaces. Then you have like organizations like elementary, high school students and individuals who will do a door. And so the special thing about this is that we will have our there electronically. There is a way that when you donate your money, you can type in your message, and then we will have our staff handwrite it and put the light bulbs on the doors. Then on social media, we will put the images out on social media that says, hey, General Electric and Johnson & Johnson, you just decked your door. Here are some photos, and we push it out to the media, push it out to our newsletters and social media as well. So that campaign translates very well virtually, because you have a fundraising aspect of it. Then you know that these light bulbs are messages that are directly to the families. And then we also allow our families to take these light bulbs home with them, whenever they're ready to go home and after the holidays. So very successful campaign. Is working extremely well. We are still having large and small groups come on and support this campaign every day.
So quick follow.
Thank you, Ashley. And Ashley really details that for you, because the volunteer experience differs, right? So you have those volunteers who are home, who really want to help, especially during the holidays or Ronald McDonald House, hence all the toy drives you see for child-related charities, right? But here's a way that you could actually build a strategy to put this in the hands of volunteers, if this is your interest, if you see this as a successful outcome. What happens then is that the volunteer at home becomes his or her own third-party fundraiser, but the vehicle is there. The Deck the Doors campaign is there, and they are basically expanding on that campaign. That may be one of the successful outcomes.
So
I put it in the group chat. Someone asked about do they have the option to provide their names? Yep, that was Ryan. Yes, they do. It literally says at the bottom, sincerely, so you can put your name. Some companies put their company stickers. Obviously, we had children do it, so they put their names on it too. So it's good to know who's supporting you. And then I know I said that this is digital as far as people can type their message. We write them. Some of our volunteers we have allowed to take the light bulbs home with them. There's a whole marketing kit that goes with this. They get to take that home and then only bring back the bulbs to us. So last year we had 18,000 of these light bulbs all over the house. They were hand personalized. And so they do have the option to hand write them this year. They just can't come in the house and deck them. So I just want to make that clear about that. So there is that personal, touch to write those bulbs.
And of course, this is a time-sensitive initiative for volunteers, right? So once Christmas comes or the holidays come, that's over with, and we're looking beyond that. Although it's an option. It's an option. As I said, we're trying to keep this as broad-based as possible.
Thank you, guys. So I think these are really good examples of initiatives that you're trying and adapting to a virtual environment. And I think a lot of the student questions are really focus on the core as to what is the objective of moving to a virtual framework for the time being. Is it to retain those volunteers so that they don't leave, supporting the organization, or is it really to continue fundraising? Is that really, the key outcome that you're looking to accomplish? Can you shed some light on really how the students might be able to respond to your prompt with ideas based on your goals of these initiatives?
The truth of the matter is it's both. Most importantly, it's keeping our volunteers connected to this charity. It can also be volunteers fundraising. We're giving both options, is how we're looking at this. But our volunteers are vital to the operation of the Ronald McDonald House. It's not that we depend on our volunteers for fundraising in terms of our business model during the course of a year, but with these, very unusual times, we do have volunteers. They love fundraising. They have taken that deck the doors and they're home now and they're saying, let us be a fundraiser for you. Previous to that, they were here in the house working, but they see, that's where their interest lies. So we are really offering the option to come up with different strategies for different types of outcomes. However, the primary outcome is to keep our volunteers engaged with this charity.
I think this is also a pretty interesting question. So is our strategy, or should our strategy be to make use of existing volunteers and like re-engaging that network of 4,000, or is it to actually try and attract new volunteers and supporters?
We have so many mechanisms in place that attract new volunteers. We have very little attrition. And honestly, since we built a commercial kitchen here and we have a full-time chef, we have become one of the primary corporate team building charities in Jacksonville because we have provided the space for an incredibly positive experience for people who are working in companies to come together and work at a charity. And what happens is that when groups come in to cook here at night, they get to meet the families, right? So there are very few charities where you can go and have an experience where you are engaged with the people in the charity. So the point here is we want to take care of the Ronald McDonald House family of Jacksonville, the family of volunteers. That's our objective.
So I know we actually include in the scope a breakdown of the demographics of the members of the community that you serve from a volunteer standpoint. Do you mind kind of highlighting in a little bit more detail, like what are the types of people that are attracted, even the corporates, right? Like, are there specific demographics within those corporations that are, more open to doing this? Is it the executive leadership team? Is it, the kind of brand new, younger analysts and associate level employees? Like, do you have any sense that you could share with us about like who's actually, the most engaged, and how could the students maybe use that as they're crafting the strategy?
I'm going to be very honest with you. It is all of the above. We will have new recruits from Deutsche Bank in here. We'll have the CEO from Black Knight. We will have 20 people who come in from the U.S. Navy. We will have retired groups. We'll have a millennial group who will come in from another, repeatedly come in from another company. We'll have groups of teachers. I often think of, if you think of McDonald's as a brand, McDonald's is a very interesting global brand in that it truly cuts across all socioeconomic lines, right? McDonald's serves everyone, right? We have the same appeal as a nonprofit, and it's really a wonderful thing to see, because honestly, we have lived in this world of diversity and equity and inclusion for 40 years. And so to us, the door is open to everyone. Everybody comes through. It doesn't matter if you're a major motorcycle gang in Jacksonville, right? Or a group of grandmothers who have been together for 20, 30 years. It's just an incredible thing to see. And it reflects the families we serve. We have families who come here who desperately need to be at a Ronald McDonald House because it's the only way they could afford or bear the financial burden of having a sick child and having them treated at a hospital. And yet, on the other hand, we have families who could well afford to stay anyplace. And wonderful things happen. Oftentimes we will see one family, make a donation on behalf of another family here. I mean, wonderful things happen here at the Ronald McDonald House, and the demographics cut across all lines. Ashley or Marina, can you add to that in any way, or?
I think you hit it on the head with the range of people who support, and especially because of that meal makers group. Like Jordan, you were asking about what's that range, that meal makers, because you can, it's something you're in the kitchen with the chef, so it's not like you have to be a chef yourself to come in our kitchen and cook. So that range is different. And then when you get down to, I know we sent over the breakdown even further, like front desk and things like that. Like front desk, those volunteer roles are perfect for like high school students. I know another one of our staff members said, because we run a house 24/7, 365, you have some people who are retired who have time in the daytime to sit at the front desk and volunteer. But then you have students who get out of school, afternoon or evening after, after school activities, and come work the desk in the evenings and on the weekends. So just that breakdown of how the roles are in our house, and just the sheer fact that we're open all the time, we have different shifts of time that really work for a huge range of people.
So I want to actually jump to a question, and then we'll go back to this next one about like how does just finance work for a nonprofit. I think that's kind of an interesting question. And I know that you guys have an annual report that kind of talks about this kind of stuff, but I think this directly relates to what you just shared, Ashley, which is like, some of the stuff that you've suggested that volunteers do are really about operational, like keeping the house running so that the actual team members can serve the families. Other ones are about, volunteers engaging with children directly, and other ones are really about supporting the family and, boosting morale in that sense. So, are you looking for suggestions across the board, or are you looking at suggestions for any particular use case, so to speak?
Diane, do you want to answer that, or?
Jordan, I'm not. Could you clarify that?
The question?
Yeah.
So should the volunteer, like the activities that the students are thinking about and ideating, is it to serve the students? Is it to serve the Ronald McDonald House from an operations standpoint? Is it to serve the families of the kids? Like who are, like, what types of activities, what types of campaigns are you looking for the volunteers to serve? I think it's about like what stakeholder within your ecosystem should the volunteers be serving?
Well, in the end, it's always about the families in any way that can support the family. So as you know, the mission of the Ronald McDonald House is to provide lodging, meals, and transportation back and forth for the families, right? The vision is to support programming inside the Ronald McDonald House now that we have expanded to the point we have expanded. Because of COVID and PPE, we've had to relaunch our mission internally. So we have a kids zone, we have a learning center, and now we can't bring all the children together in the learning center, so we are delivering the learning center in boxes to the rooms, to the children when they come back from the hospitals or their doctor's appointments, right? So we have volunteers at home that are putting together some of the activities inside the box. At the end of the day, it's always about the mission. It's our reason for being here.
And Diane, do you mind talking a little bit about kind of how finance and fundraising and all of that good stuff works for the organization? Do you rely on funds exclusively coming from donors? Maybe shedding a little bit of light into the financial status of the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville?
Sure. So being a nonprofit, we raise all of our entire budget annually here. A common myth is that we are supported by the McDonald's Corporation, which is not the case. Every Ronald McDonald house in the country is a licensee, not a franchise of McDonald's. So we're solely owned and operated here. We're a 501c3. We have a business model here in Jacksonville. Every Ronald McDonald house has a very different business model. So our fundraising focuses on corporate donations. It focuses on grants, foundations, individuals, and about 25% of our budget comes from fundraising events. We have a major golf tournament, we have a gala every year, and we have what's coming up. Our Deck the Doors has become a major fundraiser, and we have a virtual 5K in December. And that, in terms of the business model, is how we generate revenue.
Thank you so much. So I think this question is kind of interesting because it really kind of touches on like how much physical touch can be involved in any of these campaigns. So, example that Ashley, shared about Deck the Doors, there's a way for, the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville to send a kit to these organizations who can actually prepare the light bulbs themselves and then send them back. There's obviously some exchange of materials there in a kind of COVID conscious way. So I guess where and how do you draw the line about how much in person can be done? And obviously I think the key criteria here is that COVID safe, especially for immunocompromised children. So any light you can shed on that would be awesome.
Yeah, our reason for being is a children's hospital, right? And we sit right across the street from Matt Wolfson Children's Hospital and Nemours Children's Specialty Clinic. So our direction comes from the hospitals. Our protocols in operating this Ronald McDonald House are totally aligned with the hospitals. So volunteers at this point in time are not permitted inside the Ronald McDonald House, unfortunately. These decisions going forward are made on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis based on epidemiological factors, right, and how COVID is trending. So anything can be done off campus and brought in, but there are no volunteers in the house, and we do not foresee any volunteers. Well, I can honestly say that not for the holidays.
Thank you, Diane.
Which is very difficult because our volunteers, fourth quarter, the holiday season is phenomenal in this Ronald McDonald House. There is so much community engagement. Volunteers are calling us saying, please, can we come? Can we come to... Typically, we have about 30 Christmas trees that are put up in this house during the holidays, and it won't be the same this year. But and our families say things to us like, "Thank you for taking such good care of us. Thank you for protecting us. Thank you. You have to have COVID tested to get into this particular Ronald McDonald House." Our staff is always COVID tested. We're doing our best to stop the transmission of this virus, but this distributes the volunteers. And, one of the points I want to make is that this is a huge social issue in this country at this point in time. And thank you all for taking on the Ronald McDonald House. But this same problem is replicated throughout the country. It's estimated 1 in 4 Americans volunteers. All of you know somebody, I'm sure, in your lives that has volunteered at a hospital. Hospitals have no volunteers at this point in time. And you can imagine the operational impact at a hospital when you don't have volunteers at a hospital. So, you are really addressing a huge, huge operational social issue of our times right now.
And Diane, I know you mentioned that obviously the holiday season is pretty big for you guys, but the suggestions that the students are providing, it should span the timeline of all the way through the end of 2021. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay. Just wanted to clarify. So it's not like these initiatives have to be like launched, the day that they're received by the Ronald McDonald House, although they could if it's something that the students want to focus in on for the holidays. But I think even more so looking at the arc of next year and maybe coming up with a few different suggestions based on, timing, like Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, any types of holidays that are celebrated by, families across America. Obviously that might resonate with the community that you serve.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. So
and that's why we have broadened, it to be fundraising or primarily volunteer engagement.
Thanks, Diane.
How do you keep your volunteers a part of what we refer to as the Ronald McDonald House family? Mm-hmm. And that's how our volunteers speak of us. They're part of a family. So how do you keep that sense of community?
Yeah, and I want to, provide some accolades for how quickly and dynamically you guys have shifted all of your programming to virtual kind of at the drop of the hat. With Deck the Doors now being facilitated virtually, online forms need to be created, staff internally need to be ready to write, and the virtual cooking experiences. So all of that it's based on some of the old work that you used to do now in a virtual format. What are some of the challenges that you're experiencing? I think what are some of the pain points that the students should know about as they're thinking about what might be a positive solution for you to test out?
Ashley, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I think that was Marina covering that one.
Okay.
Really, with a lot of our volunteers, a lot of the issues that we see the most with going virtual is that they want that tangible aspect still. They want that sense of project still, where it's not just something that they can sit and talk about, they can, fundraise for. They want something that they can physically see is making a difference. They want, as we discussed, having that project where it can be brought to them, they can do a portion of it, and then it can be returned to us here at the house. That is what we are striving to try to find in some aspects, is giving them that option to still have that sense of purpose with what they're doing. The fundraising portion, it does do that for some of our volunteers, but we have those other volunteers who really seek to have that tangible item, and they really want to see that move forward, see it go from this sense of almost nothing to something where the families love and enjoy it. The children can have fun with it. Something that makes a difference is what they're really looking for.
And I guess, Marina, probably a good follow-up question for you, but can you just explain a little bit about how the various volunteers interact with the various types of staff member? Is it all through your supervision, or are there different kind of cohorts that interact with different team members? Like, how is all of that organized?
It's a very functional aspect of our house. It's very operational. That is something that Diane can speak better to than I can. But it's definitely an operational aspect.
Yeah, last in 2019, volunteers amounted to over 22,000 labor hours in our house.
Wow.
That's enormous, right? That's enormous in terms of productivity. The financial impact of that is tremendous. Yes, we do have volunteers who work the front desk. But we have volunteers who build walls and build doors and do the most extraordinary jobs around here. As I had mentioned before, it's 65,000 square feet. It's an enormous facility. So volunteers work in every operation of this house. And many of them provide a compassionate a compassionate piece to this experience of a family being here, right? So they help us operationally. But if you have a mom or a dad in the kitchen cooking breakfast, and the morning volunteer is in that kitchen sort of cleaning up around, these are families who are going through most likely one of the worst crises of their lives, right? And to have somebody there to talk to. You know, there's an intangible here, the impact volunteers have on this house and what they provide for the families. And then in turn, what the families provide for the volunteers. So some volunteers never, if you're painting the fence outside, maybe you never interact with the family. And, but your contribution has been tremendous, and this is the manner in which you wanted to contribute. Other volunteers want to be so close with the families. So, and they're so close and so engaged that honestly, some of our volunteers come up with like fabulous ideas, operationally, or fabulous ideas on how to engage with the families. You know, there's just a human aspect to what happens here that it's, if you could bottle it all up, the world would be a wonderful place.
Amazing. And I actually picked up on something, call it, my accounting mind, but so you mentioned 22,000 hours, there's about 4,000 volunteers. So is it fair to say that, most volunteers are putting in an average of 5 to 6 hours a year with the organization? Or is it like some are, hundreds of hours and other ones are like 1 to 2?
It's skewed. It's really skewed. I mean, we have volunteers here that if you came 3 times a week, you might think that they were employees. Yeah. Because they come every day. Yeah. We have other corporate groups that come once a month. We have groups that come 3 times a year. We have groups that come twice a year. We have groups that just come and they work our gala or they work the 5K because they're runners and they just love to be here for the 5K. It's different. I'd say the bulk of our volunteers, what did we come up with on average a month, Marina?
Well, I can tell you what it is for, in a day, it's we see about 20 active volunteers in a day here at our house. So that's our active. But in a year, we see individually, we see about 300 individual volunteers a year. So, and then that's not including all of our meal maker groups and all of our corporations. So it's very widely distributed.
Mm-hmm. But the point Marina's making is that the 3 people come in on their own. They found their own way here. That's significant. Everybody else comes in as a group.
Well, I think that's oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, okay. Also, Jordan, that was your question about like how those volunteers come in. Just wanted to kind of put that out there too, so that the students can understand what that looks like. So they mainly come through Marina, but then when there are, because I work closely with development, when there are opportunities to fold them into Deck the Doors or something like that, where it's more fundraising, she will pass them on to myself and our development team. And then for meal makers, because we have a chef, they usually come in directly through the chef. However, we do have some that start with Marina, and she'll give them all the opportunities. And if they say, hey, I would love to do the chef, then she will filter them to Chef Fernetta. So I just wanted to let you all know, like that, your question about what does that look like? How do they come in? So that's how they come in, and that's how they are filtered depending on what area they want to focus on.
That's awesome. It's almost like a freemium model, right? You start just by getting them, to just feel the passion and the culture of the Ronald McDonald House Charities of Jacksonville, and then, hey, let's work more together. Let's expand your involvement here. I really like that idea, and I think that's definitely something to play with a bit as the students think more.
Definitely.
So I think this next one's pretty regular question for any marketing strategy. Can you guys share a little bit about how you reach your volunteer audience? Are they following you on social? What social channels? Do you have email newsletters? Like what tactics are being used to connect with that audience?
All right, great point. So let's start with Facebook. So we have thousands of Facebook followers. We're over 6,000, but we reach an average about 10,000 people. So, and that's because we have great engagement on Facebook. So, with Facebook, that is the most engagement site as far as volunteers and families. So a lot of families who are in the house, they follow us on social media, and times before they have to come to the house, they obviously do their research. They do a looking around and let me see what the house looks like and things like that. So they'll get on social media, much like most of us do. If you're interested in a company or something, you go to their social media pages, maybe before you go to their website sometimes. I mean, that's how the world's working right now. So families get on because you have families who are here. Some families here are long-term, even the ones that aren't. Because it's a communal living environment, you start to make friends. And because a mom from one country, we've had that happen, who had a child with cancer, and you have a child here in the States who had cancer, and if these were friends and around the same age and had the same rare cancer, they become friends. So sometimes when you go back to your respective homes, it's good to stay in contact. And they do that a lot on Facebook. So there's a lot of messaging on Facebook with that. And then we've always had involvement with the volunteers on Facebook as well. But because they're not in the house, that engagement has elevated. So if I'm posting stuff, it's usually about Vernetta, or they'll be like, "Hey, Vernetta, we miss you." And if I post a family that's had come back to the house, they'll say, "Oh, I remember her." So they're definitely on social media because that's one of the ways that we are pushing out some of our family stories and some of the updates. We have LinkedIn, as you all know, that's more of the professional side. So some of those corporations who have helped in the kitchen with Vernetta, or help with our volunteer manager doing programs with the kids, like everybody knows, United Healthcare here in America. So you have them. I think they're worldwide now. They came in and they did a activity with our children, right? But because their volunteers are more corporate, they're more active on LinkedIn. YouTube, obviously, it's just YouTube. We just push out videos. We don't really go live on YouTube. We have Instagram. You all know Instagram, that demographic is a little bit of a younger demographic. So in that platform, more of the college students are on there. So all those like sorority and fraternity groups that volunteered with us, they're heavy on social media, which is good because you know how it is. When you start something, you grow it on social media when people are sharing and tagging other people. And then we also have Twitter as well.
Thank you so much,
Those
Ash. That was super helpful. So this next question is about how routine, how flexible or regimented is volunteering? Like, does your team have the flexibility to accept volunteers if they're just a one-time volunteer versus if they want to come every day and do the same task versus every day and do different tasks? Can you just kind of explain a little bit about how you kind of map out and operationalize that?
So the way that typically works is all of our volunteers, they have to go through an application process. And once they go through the application process, then they're orientated. And once they're orientated and onboarded onto our volunteer team, the way that typically works is that they can pick their area of interest, where they really feel that they'll fit best within our home with the skills that they bring to us. And from there, they can choose to be a volunteer, once a week. They can choose to be a volunteer once a month. For us, it's really what they're wanting to bring to our house. And we love everything and anything our volunteers can bring to us, because as you know, they provide so much to us within a year's time that we couldn't do it without them. So it really gives us the opportunity to expand a little bit. Even though they pick one day a week, it may be that's their heightened place. That's the best opportunity for them. So we let them have that opportunity.
Thank you so much. So the next question I think is pretty interesting. Is obviously you've shared some stuff on LinkedIn and Facebook about work you've done with organizations in the Jacksonville area. If the students were to come up with a campaign to re-engage those partners in a virtual way, is that something that you're open to, or are you more open to kind of generic ideas that are not like targeting specific partners in Jacksonville that might be, prior supporters of events and volunteer activities?
Well, the way this question is posed, are we able to suggest help from companies? If I think we're looking for something more generic. We certainly don't want anybody reaching out to any companies that they see are partners of ours. But we are looking for something more generic, unless there's an organization that there is something so specific about that organization that somebody sees an opportunity. But typically that has been explored. For instance, we have a very close partnership with the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? So our partnership with them really explores all the different ways, the NFL or the Jags have a willingness to engage with nonprofits. So I think we're looking for something more generic.
Gotcha. I think the key thing to reiterate there is obviously please do not reach out to anyone that Ronald McDonald House Charities of Jacksonville has worked with, or any Ronald McDonald House charities have worked with. If you have ideas and you think that they might be relevant to a certain target audience like corporates, you might want to suggest what type of corporate could be a good fit. But obviously these tactics should be useful across different types of volunteer groups. So keep that in mind. I think that's just worth reiterating. So the next question I wanted to touch on is kind of how do you measure success? I mean, we've talked about number of hours, we've talked about number of volunteers, the diversity of their tasks. Are there other KPIs, if you will, that you're looking to specifically maximize through these suggestions?
This is a very interesting question, and one that is highly discussed and debated in the nonprofit sector. So in the for-profit sector, KPIs are very clear because they're very quantitative, right? And there is a qualitative, and a nonprofit, not on the administrative side, but on the delivery of the mission side is very qualitative, right? So how do you start to quantify that? And, how do you measure the impact a volunteer has on a mom who is from the islands and came to Jacksonville for her child to have heart surgery, and she lost her child, and that volunteer sits the entire day, right, and talks to the mom through her grief and helping her to figure out how she's going to get back home, So KPIs in terms of our volunteer impact are not utilized in the most typical manner that most people think of it. There is discussion in the nonprofit world about coming up with KPIs that will quantify this qualitative factor that we're built on, the social impact, how we're going to start to measure social impact and emotional impact. We're not there yet. What defines success for us at this point in time? I think the most quantitative thing we have is probably our exit survey, which consistently has a 99 point something rating, that families feel cared for and they feel secure. And a large part of that is our volunteers that factor into that.
Would you guys be open to sharing kind of a blank version of what you use to assess the family experience on the way out of the house, just so the students can see what criteria you're using to evaluate?
You mean like posted for you?
Yeah, just so the students can see like what are the metrics that you're trying to measure with that survey for those families.
Yeah. Do you want me to speak to it, or do you want me to send that to you, Jordan?
If you could send it after, I'll add it to the project charter. I think that just sounds like a really interesting aspect that we haven't touched on yet during any of these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also, I want to make a point too that the results from that exit survey where we do for our families, it is outlined in the annual report, and it is in 2019 and 2018's report, and it'll show what some of the families rated as far as our house. And there are different things like the interaction with staff, cleanliness of the house, and things like that. There's some stats in there, as well as some qualitative information in there, like personal messages from the family as well. So.
Thank you, guys. So I know we only have a few minutes left, so we'll try to go through these rather quickly. I think there's a couple of interesting points that you guys can make as we close out here. So the next one is just, there was a question I skipped about skills matching. Like, do you try to match people's skills and interests with available volunteer opportunities? And I think this kind of plays into the same question. Do you need to train the volunteers on anything before they engage with your community?
Yes, we do. We do look at the skills that our volunteers do bring to us. Sometimes we give them opportunities to best use their skills in our house, depending on what they come with. Sometimes, as you've been told, we have retired teachers, and sometimes that skill set that they can provide to our Kids Zone Learning Center is something beyond anything else that someone else could provide for them. So we look at things like that sometimes. As well as they are required to receive training. We do 2 training sessions with our volunteers in whichever aspect of the house that they choose to take part in. And that's really just to give them familiarity of their area in the home, give them some tips on how some things go in the house. And it's real basic onboarding, but it's just us giving them an overview of what's going on in the house in their position.
And also, we are so open to a volunteer coming in with their life experience or their expertise, and we will embrace that. For instance, we had a gentleman come in one day and hand us his application for volunteering, and I opened it up, and it said he had 50 years of pediatric surgery. So we built he was a retired pediatrician. We built this whole program around called Doctor in the House. So on Tuesday, Dr. Armstrong would come into the house, and he'd hang out in the dining room, and moms and dads would just sit down with him and talk to Dr. Armstrong about anything they wanted to talk to him about. And he loved it. He had done that all his life. We will have artists who come in and will say, and they're like so incredibly talented, and we'll say, well, would you like to paint a mural on this wall? We had an artist paint a phenomenal mural of a landscape of alligators in Northeast Florida on our kitchen wall. And so, in some cases there's specific training. In other cases, if you're bringing a talent and you're bringing yourself into our house and you want to embrace us, we want to embrace you.
Thanks, Diane. I think this question just about funding. So if for whatever reason the initiatives that the students come up with are not about fundraising but actually require the deployment of funds, is that like a non-starter, or is there like a budget, for this type of volunteer engagement activity?
Well, that's based on the value of it, right? So it's a phenomenal idea. And something that can be translated into, absolutely. I mean, we're open to, is it in the budget right now? No, because that's certainly not the way budgets are designed, right? But if a phenomenal idea comes through and there is something that has a potential for a successful outcome, if the question here is, would we interpret that in and get behind that financially? Absolutely.
Thanks, Diane. I think that was really good. for the students to know. So, any policy, I thought this was really interesting, live gifts, anything that's living like a plant or a fish, or like any type of like pet that they might be able to use as like a service pet just temporarily while they're there. Is that something that's out of?
We have a service dog here. We have a facility dog, Reed. Those of you who have been on the website see he's our golden retriever, who is just phenomenally trained. We have a dog with a vocabulary of 80 words. I still don't understand it, and behaviors that I still don't understand, and I see Reed every day, but he's phenomenal. That is really the only living animal. When you have children who undergo radiation and chemotherapy, and you can't bring, we don't even have live plants in our McDonald house because we can't afford it.
So I think this is actually an excellent question. Hats off to the student that submitted this. But the question is, sorry for being a little delayed on the screen, are patients and family members provided with a mobile device or some type of technology to interact with volunteers if they come into the house without one? Obviously, digital divide is a challenge for a lot of families in the United States, of course, and I'm sure abroad as well. So, wondering, have you guys had to wrestle with this? Do you have any thoughts on technology divide?
It's a great question. Those of you who have followed us know that 4 years ago, 5 years ago now, 4 years, we completed a considerable expansion here. We took this question into consideration at that time, this digital divide, and providing our families with technology. And in our dining room, we set up 2 tables that had 12 iPads on them, sort of what you see at airports, to be sure that our families could continue to be connected to their loved ones at home, their doctors at home, their banks, their, everything that runs their life. We put another 4 iPads into the playroom for the little ones, because we believe in making sure the children develop these skills. And when we built our learning center, we built iPads into the learning center. As a matter of fact, we had our whole learning center staff last year trained in coding at UNF, and we've been teaching coding at the Ronald McDonald house here to the children. iPads were very, very important 4 years ago, 3 years ago. What we have found over the years, past 2 years in particular, most families come with an iPhone. Very few don't. They all have a phone in their room. Believe it or not, we still have landlines in the room to connect this whole building and to connect to the outside. But very few families don't have an iPhone. So we have found, although we have so many iPads here, and at this point they're used mostly for learning and other things, but most families have an iPhone.
Thank you so much for sharing. So I guess I just want to thank you all so much for putting together such an incredible experience for these students that are really looking to provide some value and help, and I just wanted to offer each of you a chance to maybe give some parting words of wisdom before we wrap up here today, because I know we won't have time for more questions. It seems like we got through quite a lot today, which I'm very proud of. But if there's anything else you want to say as we kind of wrap up here, I will just mention that I'm very excited based on these questions that the students are asking to see the results. The video means a lot. Don't forget, to record it. Make sure that we could see you, we could hear you, and that it's easy to view and share with the world, because that's really what's going to make a big difference for all the families and volunteers that are, within the community of the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville. So with that, I'll hand it off to the rest of our speakers as we kind of wrap up here today. And again, thank you so much for being here and for preparing such great content and insights for these students.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for the opportunity. Marina, any parting words?
No, I just thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to using your skill sets to see what we can do to help further our community here at the house.
I think that we hope that we have given you all the information that you need. And I know that there are some people who have had a personal experience with Ronald McDonald House. And so we just, invite you all to just remember what your time at a Ronald McDonald House looked like, and just, kind of look internally and into some ways that you think while you were here and looking back at your experience that, you would have liked or would have loved to have if you were in this period of time at a Ronald McDonald House. Because you all, the ones who had a personal relationship with the Ronald McDonald House, I think that's an extraordinary experience that will lend some really good insight to this competition. So.
Yeah, and that's great, Marina. That's terrific, Ashley. You're like so on point. And I would just like to add to that, for everybody out there on this competition, not only thank you for choosing us, you're going to make a difference, but think of yourself sitting home. And it doesn't matter if you are 18 or 25 or 55. And if you wanted to make a difference, how you would leverage maybe your social network or your ideas and make some suggestions to an organization like ours. Keep it open-ended. There's just so many solutions, and we know you're going to come up with some great ideas. So thank you so much for committing your time and effort to this.
Phyllis, do you want to add something as we wrap up?
No, just thank everybody for participating in this. It's a really exciting opportunity to really, as Diane said, to make a difference during a really, really difficult time. And it fits really well with a webinar that we held on Tuesday, where we were looking at business as a force for good. And this is an opportunity that you have to really show people that business isn't all about making profit. It's not what we see on TV or in movies a lot of time, but that business truly can be a force for good. So take that to heart and look at the information you have and think outside of the box. I've heard some people say there shouldn't even be a box, and come up with ways that these volunteers can remain engaged. Because if you have ever volunteered, there's nothing more frustrating than not being able to help the organization that you're committed to. So help the Ronald McDonald House of Jacksonville find a way to have their volunteers to be engaged until they can be there face-to-face again.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and thank you all the teams. Thank you the Ronald McDonald House. Thank you Phyllis and the IACBE team, our co-host in this competition. It would not be possible without your support. We wish you all the best of luck. We hope you're enjoying the experience. We're so excited to see your final results and to see you back here for the wrap-up webinar where we'll be announcing the winning team and giving some feedback based on the outcomes. So with that, I'd like to wrap up today. Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of the competition.
Thank you so much. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.